Welcome back to the show. My name is Chad, Mr. Comics Multiverse, and I know I haven't been putting things out in about a week or so, but I do have things recorded that I just have to process. But today we have our guest. He is currently running a Kickstarter, and we featured him on Comic Watch on our crowdfunding corner. Uh, it's Quiet Level One, an original graphic novel by Jonah Lobe, and he is here to chat with us and find out about the project and give you, hopefully within the next couple of days of the that it's live, then you'll have a chance to check it out yourself. Hey,
Hello.
Jonah, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. I appreciate the introduction.
Well, I do my best. I do what I can. So before we get talking about the Kickstarter, which I definitely want to hear because I've been, as I said, we've been featuring it in our weekly crowdfunder corner. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your history as a comic book reader, and any other work that you've done within the comic book industry, or you know
Yeah.
tell us about yourself.
Of course. So my name is Jonah Lobe. You can find me on Instagram at I am Jonah Lobe, or on YouTube as well, my Jonah Lobe channel. I am an illustrator, a 3D game artist, a concept artist, and a world builder. I started my job working at Bethesda Game Studios. If you're not familiar with them, they've made games like Skyrim and Fallout. Most recently Starfield, although I wasn't a part of that project. So I was a 3D game artist for 7 years. I made dragons and monsters and deathclaws and ghouls for games like Skyrim and Fallout 3, Fallout 4. And then I went freelance. And since that time, I've been doing a lot of online streaming. I've worked on indie games and AAA games, neither of which ever saw the light of day. I've written books that also did not get published, but then I have worked on other things that have got published. Most recently, Marvel Anatomy, which is a 230-page book all about over 60 heroes and villains. It's a dossier on all of their anatomical and physiological abilities, what sets them apart from normal people, and how do they do what they do. So the book features tons of images of cross sections of Marvel characters, and everything in the book is canon. Everything's been approved by Marvel, and it's basically Marvel's one and only biological compendium. So that was released back in October 2022. It's doing very well, 5 stars on Amazon. People like it, and that really gave me the self-confidence to pursue my most recent gig, as you describe it, Quiet Level One, which is a graphic novel which has 3 days left on Kickstarter, but pleased to say it's going very, very well. I encourage anyone who's listening to this to check out the page and at least watch the video to get a sense of what it's about. But yeah, we're almost 900% funded. We have over 1,600 backers. People are on board. People like the world, and they're excited to see where it goes. And I'm excited to finish this graphic novel and send it to people.
So, tell us a little bit about you yourself as a comic book reader. Do you remember maybe the first comic book you read, or maybe the one that made you want to delve more into them?
Yeah, I mean, so my parents never got me comic books or video games growing up, ironically, now that I've worked in both comic books and video games. But I had to rely on friends who would give me comics. So I definitely got like a random assortment over the years, just random one-off issues, Witchblade over here, and an old Spider-Man over here, and an old single issue of Sandman, that kind of thing. But what really got me going was the graphic novel series ElfQuest. Later on in life, I got into Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and Squee, and then it was on to Ghost in the Shell and things like that. And those were some of the most formative moments for me. And then I remember the first time I really got a sense of like the depth, narrative depth you can go was I got a book called Batman Venom for my birthday. And I thought, oh, heck yeah, it's Batman versus Venom. I love both those characters. And of course, I didn't understand what the difference was between Marvel and DC at the time. And in fact, it was a book about Batman basically getting addicted to drugs, essentially. But it was a tremendous book, great narrative, very dark, harkened back to the old Detective Batman series, and the art was spectacular. And so those
Denny O'Neil, if I remember correctly.
Sorry?
Said Denny O'Neil, if I remember correctly.
I think that's correct. Yeah, good memory. Exactly. And then I think one of my first times really getting into Marvel was I got an issue, again, random one-off issue of Spirits of Vengeance, which I think it had been crossed off to be Spirits of Venom. But it was basically, it had Venom and it had Blaze, which is no longer really a hero anymore. It had Ghost Rider and all that. And it was all illustrated by Adam Kubert. And I was just like really blown away by the art in that, and just instantly became fans of Venom and Ghost Rider. And so, yeah, it was a very disparate kind of upbringing where I just had to rely on the crumbs given to me by others. But, I could take those and really fan the flames.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about the graphic novel. Give us like an overview and tell us about some of the characters that are in it.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a dark fantasy world. But when I say dark, I don't really mean it's not gritty, it's not gory. It's very fantastical. It's quite whimsical. The story of Quiet Level 1 is the story of a Level 1 skeleton named Quiet, a very small, very cute little skeleton, non-speaking. The protagonist cannot speak, but they are forced to go up against a level 100 barbarian. This is a huge guy with a huge axe and a helmet with huge horns. His name is Galahorn, and he is intent on climbing the Tree of Worlds and felling it. And essentially, the Tree of Worlds is similar, which is where the universe takes place, is similar to Yggdrasil, the world tree of Norse mythology. But if you take that and blend that idea with video games, so as a video game designer and as a lover of graphic novels and comic books and Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy, this is very much a love letter to those things. And so the Tree of Worlds functions like a video game where you have to go up and up and up and up to ascend to the top. So Quiet Level 1 takes place in the Labyrinth, which is level 1 of the world tree, which is underground. The whole first book takes place in an underground labyrinth where Quiet and Galahorn are in different parts of the maze, and Galahorn is trying to escape, and Quiet is trying to stop him from escaping. So it's funny, it's whimsical, it is dark. It's a Jonah Lobe production, so it's full of monsters. Monsters are my thing, which is kind of what I do. And it's great. I'm in love with it. Yeah. So, and you asked about the characters. There's 4 main cast members as I have them now. There's Quiet, a small non-speaking skeleton, very sweet, very heart forward. There's Galahorn, the huge barbarian, very dogmatic, pretty humorless, savage, violent, but does live by kind of a code of ethics. He is the antagonist. There's the other protagonist, the sidekick of Quiet, is a character called the Narrator Worm. And the Narrator Worm is a small caterpillar that Quiet carries around with him. And this caterpillar, their biological function is to narrate from the perspective of whoever they're with. So, Chad, if you picked up a Narrator Worm, it would immediately start narrating everything that's going on with you right this second. And it would do so with its own authorial voice. So it's not a complete look into your head, because it's still an external entity with its own personality and own opinions, which it will sometimes editorialize, in there. And also it can notice things that maybe you don't. For instance, if your Narrator Worm is hungry, it might say, Chad felt a rumbling in his stomach and he wanted some food. And so it is a narrator, but it's not an omniscient narrator entirely, and it exists only within the story. So the Narrator Worm cannot narrate if it's not in that scene, for instance. Yeah. It also can't narrate if it's underwater or if there's no air. And so, yeah, that's the third character.
Sounds like something that would drive my wife mad if I had it.
I think so, exactly. But if she had her own narrator worm who had spoken in her
Oh, I don't
voice,
want to hear. I don't want to hear that.
exactly, exactly. And then the fourth and final main character is Threadcutter. Threadcutter is a black knife with an eye in it, and it is evil incarnate. It is manipulative. It is cruel. It is petty, and it's inadvertently one of the funniest characters in the graphic novel because it also has no chill. Threadcutter
Mhm.
has been locked away for thousands of years, and it has a really hard time pretending to be anything other than complete evil. And so those are the four main characters of the world. Yeah.
So, when you were developing, your graphic novel, how did your experience um, with, video game, does that, your video game experience help you, make this book?
I worked in video games for a bunch of years. It definitely helped me with the art. I became very, very good at art, especially character art. That's kind of my specialty. But I think I learned a lot about how you can tell a story using different mediums. I learned a
Mhm.
lot more of how you run a project from the top down, as opposed to in addition to being the artist and illustrator. And I learned a lot about how to focus your content, how to focus your story. And so even though I worked on games like Skyrim and Fallout, which are open world games that feature essentially a continent worth of material to explore, these are games that feel limitless. But in reality, the intention that we set forth was very limited in terms of what the game is and what the game isn't. And I think that I learned a lot about storytelling and packaging of an idea because I love the idea of Quiet Level 1, but you can have an amazing idea, but if you can't articulate it to others, it gets lost, right? And so I
Mhm.
think that being able to focus my vision on the Tree of Worlds and these four main characters, and even just excluding the two sidekicks, there's two main characters in a world. That has helped me focus me a lot. And then when it comes to content, I'm deeply informed about video games. There are areas in the game that are similar in many ways to video games. There's like kind of checkpoints, there's levels, there's health potions, there's upgrades, there's new enchanted weapons, like a sword of striking +2, that kind of thing. So I'm heavily informed by these worlds. Yeah, yeah. Those are the main ways I can articulate that.
Okay, cool. So, was there one character that maybe you grew attached to as you were writing writing the graphic novel,
Yes,
or
I'm very
maybe
attached.
one that, or maybe one that was like a side character that you would like to explore more eventually?
I definitely have some side characters, excluding these four main ones. I have really been thinking a lot as I delve into this graphic novel about the villain, Galahorn. He is unlike Quiet, who's non-speaking, he speaks, and he's the closest thing that this world has to a human. He comes from a people called the Protog, and they're kind of like Viking-esque warriors, but he is just a very deep character. And the more I think about the story, the more I kind of fall in love with him as a villain or as an antagonist because he's not evil. And I think, and yet he's an unstoppable and undeniably like really, bad force. And so I think that I've really come to relish and enjoy and anticipate kind of delving into his character more because as much as the story is about Quiet and their efforts to disrupt Galahorn's plans, they also this is also there's multiple character arcs. So for instance, I was very inspired by the Avengers movies, especially Infinity War, especially the first half of that duology, because they treated Thanos' journey in every respect as the hero's journey. Structurally, that first movie, structurally, he is the hero because we are watching his quest to undertake his admittedly evil plan, right? And you see the journey he's been on, you see the sacrifices that he has to make, you see the hurdles he has to go through, and you see him wrestle with things and be stymied at every turn. And I really that's to me that made Thanos one of the most intriguing and fantastic characters in the MCU, and so I look forward to developing Galahorn over the course of this graphic novel and beyond.
So so the story that you're kickstarting now is kind of a self-contained story. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, it's self-contained. There's obviously there's a major cliffhanger, and when you have a book series called Quiet Level 1, you're kind of inherently telling people that there's going to be a level 2. But I have no desire to make something that feels incomplete. So this graphic novel is going to be meaty. It's going to be almost 200 pages long. If you get the hardcover version, you're also getting concept art in the background. In the back, you're getting other writing. You're getting art. I did a draw this in your style contest on social media, and I've gotten dozens of submissions of people making awesome art all about Quiet and Galahorn and these other characters. And so some of that, the winners of that, will be in the back of the book as well. So it's a meaty chunk of material, and it's designed to really fulfill you. And it's self-contained in that regard. It has a beginning, middle, and an end. With that said, there's very obvious on-ramps to the continuation of the story that move beyond that.
So as you put your first graphic novel together, do you feel that you've grown as a creator?
Good question, Chad. Part of the reason I went into this medium is to grow. One of the reasons I left Bethesda Softworks, if anyone knows Bethesda Game Studios, they make very, very big games. These are AAA titles. They win lots of awards. But at a certain point, I just felt like I wasn't growing anymore as an artist and as a creator, because even though the work I was doing was better every year I was there, and the work I was given was cooler every year, my basic pipeline that I worked on, my workflow, didn't really change over the course of those 7 years. And I longed for new ways to grow. As I have delved into, so for a while I worked on digital painting, I worked on illustration and that kind of thing. And now I'm really getting into the comic world. And I am learning an amazing amount about sequential storytelling. How do you tell a story sequentially? How do you lay out a page to make it the most easily readable? At what stage do you even bring in a letterer? My process has changed because for a while I was doing the art and kind of putting the lettering in myself and all that. And now that I've gotten, X number of pages along, and now we're successfully kickstarting this thing, I am going to be employing a letterer, this guy, Tom Napolitano, earlier on in the process, and make it more collaborative.
I'm sorry, you said Tom Napolitano. He's a well-known letterer.
He is. So. He is. He was recommended to me by James Tinian, who I befriended about a year ago.
Now you're just name dropping.
Yes. No. Well, I can't name it. I can't name any other people, but I did have coffee with James about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. And kind of because we're just both in the city, and I just reached out to him. We had mutual connections, and so I reached out to him, and he gave me, we hung out for a couple hours, and he was the one who recommended Tom Napolitano, who's been wonderful, who lives actually quite near me as well. And there's many aspects of this that I long to do myself, but at a certain point, I'm like, let the experts take over, man. Like, I'm still, listen, I'm a veteran artist. I'm a newbie comic maker. So let the experts do their thing, Yeah. And so I've learned an enormous amount about how do you tell a story sequentially and how do you do that effectively. And just the act of learning these things is exhilarating, because for me as a creator, if I'm not growing as a creator, I don't want to do whatever it is I'm doing. And so I did 3D art for a very long time. I felt like I was scraping the ceiling of my particular title. I was like, I feel like I'm doing the same things again and again, just at a sharper and sharper degree. But now I want to do something completely new. And in the world of comics, there's so much I don't know, or there's so much I'm learning, that the feeling is honestly exhilarating. And so I'm learning a great deal about this medium, and I completely love being humbled and learning new things. Yeah, it's been wonderful.
So, you talked about, who inspires you as a writer, or who do you look to for to say I like not I don't exactly want to copy them, but I like the way that they present things. And I guess since you're a double threat, I guess we can also say art wise too.
What? Oh, art wise. It's so, you know what? That's so hard for me to answer, Chad, because, it's the kind of thing that if you'd asked me 15 years ago, I'd have a much clearer answer. But after the last 10, 15 years spending my time on social media, making connections and meeting other people remotely, online, etc., I have become absolutely swamped by inspiration and talent. There's so many amazing writers and so many amazing artists out there. And what it really comes down to is whose artistic or authorial voice am I kind of hankering for at that particular moment. So
Mhm.
because, if you asked me 10, 15 years ago who my favorite writer was, I'd say, oh yeah, Stephen King or something, but these days I still think he's, one of the greatest of all time, but I'm not that interested in reading his stuff anymore because he's just done so many things that I've kind of seen the patterns and all that. And the same goes for art. I just, it's like when you ask me like who my inspiration for art is, I'm like, I see so much amazing art every day, and so when it comes to the things that inspire me for this book in particular, I harken back to things like the comic book Bone is one big one. I think movies like writing like The Hobbit, that kind of thing, where you have this kind of
Mhm.
unwilling hero who ultimately really just wants to have a cup of tea and a warm fire. Um, I think about movies like Conan, where you have a lot of implied storytelling throughout. The original Conan with Schwarzenegger, a spectacular movie, and the artistic direction is so unlike so much of what we've seen in the last 20 years, 30 years, even, because a lot of that has been very Western centric. But that was a movie that had a lot of like Mongolian reference and artistic reference and all these different things. And created a much more unique kind of aesthetic. Shows like Primal, that
Mhm.
use virtually no words, but action and bold visuals. These things are very inspirational for me. So I listen to fantasy all the time. For a long time, I stopped listening to fantasy or reading fantasy because I just felt like, I don't know, I just felt like everything was retreads of things that had come before. But I think we actually live in an age of just so much. It's like a renaissance of fantasy is occurring
Mhm.
right now. So it really depends on what I'm in the mood for. But some ones that stand out to me these days are N.K. Jemisin, Brandon Sanderson. Um, I was listening to some horror books by what's his name, Grady Hendrix. Let me look at just look at my library here. I have I have so much stuff that I just love. I mean, as an artist, I can listen to audiobooks as I work because it kind of uses different parts of my
That-
brain. So I've just been devouring things. And most recently, I've been listening to Michael J. Sullivan's Age of Myth series.
mhm.
So yeah, it's really hard for me to answer that question definitively because I'm just everywhere I look, I get inspiration.
No? Okay. So this being your first Kickstarter, am I correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Were you surprised at the response that you have been getting from people interested in the project?
Yeah. Yes. I have. I mean, on the, yes and no. Um, I am certainly overwhelmed by the support. I love it, but I would not have gone down this route if I didn't believe in this.
Mhm.
This is the reason I'm kickstarting this one to begin with. I've been in the industry now for 20 years, 20 plus years, and I know what's good, right? And I've created a lot of things before that I was happy with, but are not designed to be blockbusters. They're not designed for mass appeal, and they're not designed for everybody. And when I came up with Quiet Level One in its current form, and really, because I let it simmer for a couple of years, I really felt in my heart from the beginning that this is something that people will connect with because the main characters, not only are they really cute, but they are a real hero, not like a superhero who has superpowers. this is a character who is completely overwhelmed and completely overpowered by everything in their world, and yet they keep struggling and they keep working towards their goals, and they are very heart forward. They really care, and I think that's what people really connect with. They really are. People are looking for characters and stories with heart, and but with that, so I knew this had the pedigree of something that people would love, but the actual turnout has been staggering. I've gotten, with over 1,600 backers so far. And we're almost 900% funded. We've broken through 13 stretch goals. We have all these cool extra things, extra paintings in the book, extra posters. I have these metal figurines, which unfortunately your audience cannot see, but you can see, Chad, these little figurines of Quiet. I designed these on the computer, and then they were made by an actual foundry in Greece. They're gorgeous. They're made of brass. We were even thinking of doing even more of those, because we're like, not just more of these, but of the villain Galahorn. Because things are going so well. So I am certainly surprised and immensely grateful that other people are buying into this world. Yeah.
So when you were kind of a question about your Marvel anatomy thing, because as we were talking, I was kind of just looking at some of the pictures on the internet. What was the hardest character to illustrate, and what was your favorite?
Oh yeah. So I knew with Marvel Anatomy that with all these, over 60 heroes and villains, that every one of them is somebody's favorite. So you really have to put the work in for every single one of them if you can. The hardest ones, honestly, are the ones that appear the most human. I also find drawing women to be more difficult than drawing men, because I think there's more room for like weird bulbous shapes and kind of weird creasing of the face, and there's men are generally drawn in a rougher style, whereas women, especially in the superhero genre, are supposed to be rendered with much cleaner, simpler lines. So I always found drawing women, at least not their face but bodies, a little bit more difficult, because you have to be almost more poetic in your line work. And so whereas other characters like MODOK or Red Hulk or whatever are super easy for me to draw, but I'm also good at specifically monstrous characters. So my favorite ones to draw were tend to be the more monstrous ones: Venom, Man-Thing, Groot. I loved drawing MODOK with his big ridiculous brain. And Leader with his even more ridiculous tall head. These were so fun for me to do. And then some random ones, like I didn't think I was very good at doing Tech, because Tech is very different from organic art. It's a lot cleaner lines, simpler, more mechanical. But I loved making Iron Man, Ultron, and Jocasta, even though nobody knows Jocasta, but I just loved doing the illustrations for her. And I would say the hardest ones were Spider-Woman and let me think. Maybe Spider-Man, and I was really unhappy with with my work on with the Invisible Woman. So yeah, there's you can't.
Can you just put the blank page and say that's the Invisible Woman?
I considered that. People might not be completely enthused. Yeah.
Just a skeleton or something.
It would have been easier for me. Yeah.
So, having dipped your toe into the comic book, making world, is there any character in particular that you would like to have a shot at, or anybody you'd like to work with?
Now that is an interesting question. I'm looking at my books back here. This is definitely one of those silences you'll have to edit out of the video.
There's no editing in this.
Yeah. Woo. Uh-oh.
I don't know. First thing that comes to your mind without,
I mean, I think, again, I love Venom, and he's endlessly fun to draw. He's just wild, laughing power. But with that said, the reason I took on Marvel Anatomy and have not sought work with Marvel before that was because I am a huge believer in creating original content and original
Yeah.
creativity, and
Okay.
in the comic book world, especially when it comes to seriously canonized material like Marvel's work, pantheon of works, it's really hard to find a space as just an artist in which you can invent.
Mhm.
And especially because, and when it comes to the actual content invention, that's a lot of that is up to the writers, and it's on the authors. It's on the artists to simply depict it. And so the reason I'm having such a hard time answering that question is because there has not historically been a great deal of space for someone like myself who likes inventing new stories and inventing new worlds and all these things to inhabit these play spaces that are so heavily canonized where everything is kind of figured out. And so Marvel Anatomy was the exception because nobody had done this before with these Marvel characters. And there was so much room for me to play, invent, and add new canon that has since been approved by Marvel as canon. And so I have a hard time answering the question about what else I want to work on within these spheres because I'm addicted to the desire to invent new things and create new worlds. And so when I think about illustrating for another one of these titles, it feels a little bit like a step back, even though it would be a step up in terms of visibility and hugeness and publication and all these things, because these are huge titles, right? That I would be lucky to work on. But at this point in my life, I would be happier to work on something smaller that is more mine.
Sure. That's completely fair, and I can see that being something that you would want to do.
Yeah.
So, as we kind of wrap this up, is there anything that maybe we didn't talk about that you wanted to mention about the graphic novel or the campaign or anything like that?
Sure. Yeah. So the hardcover that we're including with the hardcover version of the book, you can get it in digital, softcover, or hardcover with a beautiful slipcase with gold on it and everything. It's exclusive. That hardcover will be exclusive to the Kickstarter. So if you're listening to this and you want this like kind of one-off hardcover version, please hop on it. As I said, we've crashed through a whole bunch of stretch goals, and just this weekend we crashed through the most recent stretch goal, which is an upgrade of the paper quality across the board. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's an addition of a gold foil print on the inside, and very soon, before the end of the campaign, all hardcovers will be upgraded to this other higher quality. So, if you're, obviously, if you're hearing this now, you've probably coming to Quiet Level 1 a little bit late, but that's perfect because as the campaign ends, you are getting essentially the most upgraded, most deluxe version. When we started the campaign, we didn't know how much money we would make. We were already confident in the quality of the graphic novel out the gate, but because we've been able to crash through these different stretch goals, the quality has just been upgraded again and again and again of the book. And so what you're getting at the end at this point is going to be marvelous. There are 3 more days left. There's a lot of goodies. There's enamel pins. There's bookmarks. There's world maps. There's, as I said, metal figurines. We had a life-size axe, the axe of the villain. But that has been that has been taken. That, in fact, within 4 hours, somebody grabbed that axe. And there's lots of goodies for you to see. And I really hope you hop on to that because it's a really fun. It's going to be a great world, a great journey, and I'm really, really pumped. And then in addition to that, just if you're curious about art and world building, if you're listening to this right now and you are somebody who enjoys building worlds, whether that's artistically or through your writing or anything, come find me on YouTube or come find me on Instagram or come follow my newsletter, which is entirely free and will always be free. It's all about world building. And essentially, I feel very lucky to do what I do for a living. And I karmically try to pay that forward by putting everything I know and everything I learned about these processes out there for free. And so as I have worked on Marvel Anatomy, I created a Marvel Anatomy YouTube series where you watch me create these pictures from their really, really crappy first thumbnail drawing all the way through to the polished, finished version. I made a documentary, an hour long, where I interview 8 other developers. We worked on Skyrim. How do you make a game like Skyrim? I sought to explain that in that video. And as I go forward working on Quiet Level 1, I will be updating my process and describing my process, sorry, via my newsletter and via my YouTube channel. And so it is, these are resources that I have built for you to help demystify the creative process and help hopefully light your way on your own journey.
All right. Well, as we want to give one final pitch for the campaign, and tell us where. I know you said they could find you on the social medias, but I don't know if you gave the actual handle.
Sure. Yeah. You can find me on YouTube by just Googling Jonah Lobe YouTube. I'm also at youtube.com/Jonah Lobe Draws. You can find me on Twitter at just Jonah Lobe. You can find me on Instagram at I am Jonah Lobe, and my newsletter, which again is totally free. Just go to Jonah Lobe Substack. It's called the Tree of Worlds. It's currently the number 18th comic blog on Substack right now. And so you can find me through those venues. And as for a final pitch of the book, dark, whimsical, scary, funny, sweet. Mostly the art is in black and white. It's got action. It's got monsters. It's got underground labyrinths. If you're a fan of fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, or video games, you will, upon opening this up or taking a look at it, you will understand immediately that this was designed for you. You're going to love it.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking your time today to chat about the project. And sorry, next time that you have another project come up, let's do this sooner rather than in the last couple of days. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time. And it looks like a very interesting project. And I'm glad you're having a lot of success on your first campaign.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited about it. I'm really grateful to have gotten this far. And I'm really grateful to you, Chad, for having me on, and for all your listeners for taking the time to listen to me and hopefully checking it out. That's a great little animation trailer video on the Kickstarter webpage. So if you're just curious and you want to see me, obviously you've heard my dulcet tones on this podcast. But if you want to get a sense of who I am and what the project is, and even see a little trailer, just go to the Kickstarter page and check it out. So thank you guys so much for listening, and thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, again, we'll talk, and you can find. You won't be able to find this one next Saturday on our crowdfunding corner, but there will be other great projects which we think you should check out. And like I said, we'll be in touch, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.